In the world of farm food safety, there are many terms and program names. Do you know the difference between the FSMA Produced Safety Rule and third-party audits, known as food safety certification? This video by the University of Hawaii at Manoa, College of Tropical Agriculture and Human Resources, Farm Food Safety Team, and the Hawaii Department of Agriculture will compare the who, what, how, and why between third-party audit certifications and the FSMA Produce Safety Rule. One of the main differences between the Produce Safety Rule and third-party audits are their driving forces and who requests or requires them of farmers. The Produce Safety Rule is one of the 7 rules of the FSMA and is a federal regulation under the authority of the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. Therefore, compliance with its requirements is required by federal law. Unlike the mandatory, compliance-driven the Produce Safety Rule, third-party audits are primarily market-driven. Audits are voluntarily completed by growers in order to sell products to buyers who require certification. However, these audits are not a replacement for FSMA compliance. The main proponents, or advocates, of the FSMA Produce Safety Rule are the federal government, state departments of agriculture like the Hawaii Department of Agriculture, and consumers who want safe food to eat. Similarly, consumers are also proponents of third-party audits and a safe food supply, but the main proponents of these certifications are the buyers. This is because third-party audits assure buyers that the products they are sourcing are safe. While the foundation of audits and the FSMA Produce Safety Rule is good agricultural practices, they differ in what they cover. However, both audits and the Produce Safety Rule are based on the foundational principles of good agricultural practices, which are the voluntary guidelines established by the Food and Drug Administration in 1998 for farmers to reduce the risk of microbial contamination of fresh produce. The Produce Safety Rule applies to raw agricultural commodities that are produced for consumption in the United States, including domestic and imported products. The requirements provide the minimum food safety standards for the growing, harvesting, and packing of fresh produce. On the other hand, third-party audits are global. There are nationally and internationally recognized audit standards that can be used to certify produce from across the globe. While the FDA is primarily concerned with crops that are commonly eaten raw, audits may cover any produce, so long as it is required or requested by a buyer. The Produce Safety Rule are specific regulations that spell out required practices and numerical thresholds that must be followed to comply with federal law. Although a written farm food safety plan is not required, the Produce Safety Rule does require farms to keep records regarding worker training, agricultural water quality and systems, soil amendments, cleaning and sanitizing schedules, or information supporting exemption status, such as micro or processing exemptions. The specifics of third-party audits vary based on the different entities and organizations that conduct the audit, but audits do require farms to create and maintain a written farm food safety plan and associated records. Although audit checklist specifics can sometimes overlap with Produce Safety Rule requirements, audits may not list exact thresholds or practices that must be followed. An important question asked by farmers is how the Produce Safety Rule is enforced and administered. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration is responsible for enforcement of the Produce Safety Rule, but has agreements with many states to support its implementation, training, and enforcement. In Hawaii, the Hawaii Department of Agriculture helps the FDA to administer the Produce Safety Rule locally, including collaboration with the University of Hawaii to train growers. As of 2023, the Hawaii Department of Agriculture does not assist the FDA in enforcing the Produce Safety Rule through inspections. In Hawaii, enforcement of the rule is done through scheduled inspections at the expense of the FDA. The FDA will contact farmers before the first inspection visit. If any activities are deemed non-compliant, the inspector will provide areas for improvement for farmers to address before a possible follow-up visit. Only in severe cases involving certain egregious activities, such as employees not washing their hands after the restroom or shipping out covered produce visibly contaminated by animal feces, would the FDA inspector have the authority to use stricter consequences. Third-party audits are more straightforward in that farmers initiate the first audit visit when they are ready. Audits are pass-fail, based on a scoring system, and are conducted at the farmer's expense for the auditor's time and travel. Third-party certification bodies use audit standards to conduct audit visits. Typically, the first visit is announced or scheduled with the farmer, while the second visit is unannounced and scheduled by the auditor. unlike the produce safety rule inspection, which varies in frequency and the farmer only receives a post-inspection report. Upon passing both audit visits, the farmer receives a certification from the third-party certification body. Audits occur annually, thereafter for the farmer to maintain certification status. There are many benefits to meeting the regulatory requirements of the produce safety rule, as well as obtaining third-party certification. The common benefit is that safe fruits and vegetables enter the food system for consumers. Compliance with the produce safety rule is in the interest of growers because it is mandatory. Obtaining certification by a third-party audit benefits growers and buyers. Growers are able to maintain markets or access new ones with certification, and in turn, buyers are provided with assurance that the products they are sourcing are safe and present little risk. Growers should prepare for compliance with the produce safety rule and inspection by completing the Produce Safety Alliance grower training to satisfy the training requirement under the rule. At this training, growers learn the best practices of produce safety and the requirements of the rule. With this understanding, growers can then return to their farms and make any necessary changes or updates on farm practices to comply with the requirements. Growers should also begin keeping the required records or organize their existing records to prepare for an inspection. Another educational opportunity for growers is the voluntary on-farm readiness review to assess a farm's readiness for inspection in a confidential, educational, non-regulatory setting. Those who need to prepare for an audit should start by verifying which audits their buyer accepts. Once confirming the audit, growers should determine which certification bodies offer their desired audit. To prepare, growers should start by reviewing the audit standards and checklists to determine what changes must be made to practices, procedures, and policies to meet the audit standards. Within the audit standards, growers should pay close attention to the required records and written policies to pass the audit. As mentioned earlier, audits require written farm food safety plans, and efforts should be made to develop and compile a plan before the audit date. For more information on the FSMA Produce Safety Program, growers can contact the CTAR Farm Food Safety Team or the HDO Hawaii Produce Safety Program. Growers who are interested in third-party audits can contact the HDO Commodities Branch for USDA Good Agricultural Practices audits, such as GAP Harmonized GAP and Group GAP. For all other audits, contact the respective certification bodies. The content in this video was adapted from the 2019 webinar series for growers developed by Lusa et Castro.